How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Sean and Omar podcast.
Hello.
Thank you for listening. I'm Sean.
I'm Omar.
Today we're going to be talking about separating artists from art, which is a topic I've tackled in my recent essay for Writing 112. I guess a brief recap of recent events that set this off is talking about Kanye's recent anti-Semitic remarks on Twitter and all of the, controversy surrounding that, and then kind of expanding that to other artists as well. So now we're going to just run through some different discussion questions and just generally kind of talk some things out. One of the important things is that since I've written my essay, things have kind of changed a lot with Kanye because he had made his comments on Twitter, such as, him saying he was going to go DEFCON 3 on Jews. But since then has even one-upped that by saying, Hitler wasn't so bad of a person. And I guess, the first question to tackle based on my essay is how have things changed after his comments on Alex Jones' podcast? I know personally I was maybe slightly more on the side of defending Kanye before those comments. Obviously, I disagree with his comments, all of his comments regarding that, but I could see maybe past it to, based on the quality of his art and me being a fan before. But I know after his most recent comments, I've had a much harder time listening to his music.
I honestly agree with you in the sense that it is much, much harder to sort of separate the artist with the art, as the name of your essay implies. But going into this, the perception of Kanye as a person, of someone who's not been on his meds, someone who just got divorced, who's dealing with all these traumatic sort of situations beforehand and afterhand. So it's not like Kanye is a stranger to all these kind of things. And
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's always very hard to defend what he does. But I feel like there's always, we live in a place where you have a right to do what you want and you have a right to practice what you preach or whatever, but it comes a point where you influence all these people,
Right.
And you have a position of power, right? And you can't use that position to sort of negatively highlight a group of people or a certain population who were at one point listening to your music or that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
And this comes at a very weird time, too, where Elon Musk has just taken over Twitter and has caused a lot of weird upheaval with so-called free speech, where he unbanned a lot of people. He unbanned Trump, notably, and Kanye, although Kanye was recently banned again because of his comments on the Alex Jones podcast. So with all this stuff going on with Twitter and Elon Musk, and, it's all very in the news and popular right now, it kind of brings us to, a very defining question, which is, when is it appropriate to define the limit of freedom of speech? And there's really not, a right answer. It's, but there's definitely a lot of controversy surrounding it right now.
I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, it's definitely something that's always been on our minds, and, with all these centralized media and how social media has now become an essential part of our lives. So it comes at a point where whatever you say online translates to you as a person, whereas previously the internet was used to sort of run away from our reality in a sense. So when we talk about defining the limit of freedom of speech, I think we should talk about how it is in our real world, because there are some things that usually should be left unsaid, and I believe that when you're at a certain point in your life, when you're influencing all these sort of people, there comes a point where you have to be responsible with what you're saying and what you're not saying, and I feel like it's very, very immature and very, unfair to people when you sort of you're entitled to your opinion, and I stand by that, of course, but it comes at a point where you've, I can't say visualize, because it's not visualize, it's more vocalize that sort of intent and, target a group of people. That's when I believe when you trespass another person's freedom, that's when your freedom should be limiting itself. That's where it should be limited. Once you trespass another person's domain, that's when it should be.
Right. It's definitely hate speech, I think, is a big line.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people try to argue what the definition of hate speech is, but despite whatever your crazy opinions are, I guess, like if you're specifically attacking a group of people, that's definitely hate speech. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I know personally as a Kanye fan, it's been, I guess, obviously a lot harder recently to listen to Kanye music.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people who, weren't Kanye fans already are probably certainly not going to be Kanye fans now and have a lot more ammunition as to, like, against Kanye. And it's just like, how does this really affect our perception of Kanye's music career? I mean, we know he's made some incredibly influential music. Some would argue some of, like, the best music in hip-hop in general. So it's like, do his comments now really change all of that?
Okay, I could go first. I mean, I come in as someone who doesn't really listen to Kanye, but I understand why a lot of people would appreciate the music or appreciate what he's done to the scene. And I obviously do like some of his tracks and some of his albums. And I feel like it's very, very difficult not to separate the identity of the artist and the art itself, because part of the art is the artist's identity flowing into that, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's a lot, like, it's not two distinct entities rather than someone, like, it's not one person, but it also isn't, like, two different fields or aspects of that. It's all kind of one big thing, and I feel like when someone would go in listening to Kanye after, obviously, everything that's happened, they come in with an already negative perception, and I feel like with everything that's happened and all this sort of drama he's been a part of, and not just, like, the recent fiasco, everything leading up to that, I feel like going into it, it's definitely a lot harder to relate to or, like, actually try to appreciate the music that he's done. And that's really not much I could talk about other than that.
I mean, I think we can discount Kanye as a person, especially more recently, and still let some of, like, the artistry of his past music remain. I mean, it's going to remain regardless in its influence, obviously. But I mean, I don't think it certainly should be, like, taken off the Spotify store or anything.
Oh no, I agree.
But, there is always that thing, when you're listening to it, you're still supporting them financially, even if it's, a very small amount with, like, 2 Spotify streams. But, yeah. So talking about Kanye and the impact of his art also leads us to another defining question around the topic, which is, what qualifies as good or important art, which, I think is an important thing to consider when talking about whether we should separate an artist from their art, because it's likely a lot easier to do so if, people feel that it's not as quote-unquote important. But, what does that really mean? What is important art? I think good or important art is it's any type of art. Obviously, it's a personal thing, but it's any type of art that's made, like, a very influential impact on public culture, and it's definitely, there's a lot of clear examples, in, like, I guess more ancient examples, obviously, of, like, Michelangelo's David, but you can compare that type of thing to Kanye's music or even a lot of other people's music. Let's say, I don't know, Beyonce or Jay-Z, it's obviously, I think it's easy to see that their music has made, a big impact culturally, both in social movements and musically. And I would definitely consider some of their music important to our culture and maybe harder to kind of just immediately, wipe away, get rid of in the public consciousness.
I mean, yeah, you see even parties that we could go to, you usually see them still playing the same type of music, and
right,
regardless of whatever everything's happening, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, in terms of, like, good art or important art, I'm pretty much of the same opinion, but I also believe that in order to influence a mass group of people, you need to influence every person individually. And that's why we see, like, even the rise of social media right now with all these relatable people and that sort of thing. It's very much easier to make an impact on a large group of people when you impact them personally. And I feel like the medium of music and musicians and hip hop relates to a large majority of us as like teenagers or kids or like just the modern human in general. And I feel like once you impact that sort of person, you impact every person, wherever they come from or whoever they come from, wherever they come from. I believe that you'll be able to make a huge impact that's like not easy to shake off, especially with everything that's happening right now.
So do you think if an artist has made more of an impact, then their art should be, I guess, for higher consideration of being kept, I guess?
Not really. I just believe, I think the art always comes first. But I also believe that with the prominence of the art, more of a spotlight is put on the artist. So with every action they choose to do, with every action they choose to do, they're definitely much more scrutinized than their art. So, and I believe that makes them more of a sort of influence than the actual art itself.
And I know one thing I considered in the essay is that not every artist's art is like specifically tied to their identity, whereas like especially maybe more controversial parts of the identity, I don't think there's a lot of like Kanye's music that anyone would say is really anti-Semitic or racist in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe there's more of a consideration there, again, to not necessarily tie it to their direct identity.
That's true. Yeah, talking about that sort of separating the art and the artist, we talk about the other types of people and not specifically Kanye, especially like with the recent news and everything of Kyrie also pretty much spouting the same type of stuff recently and him being kicked off the Nets for a while. And now he's back, and I'd like to know your opinion on that. What do you think? Whether that ties into what you want to talk about, or you think it's sort of part of the same argument or not?
I think it's definitely part of the same argument. I did mention it in the essay. Kyrie's an interesting figure due to his, anti-vax, and, some people argue that's obviously his right not to get it and his right to speak out. And we kind of have to consider the balance between, people's public health and safety and his personal choice and whether that's an acceptable thing to keep him from playing basketball. I know he recently he did finally apologize for his endorsement of the anti-Semitic documentary, which is why he wasn't playing. And one thing I talk about in the essay is that, playing basketball is a very different thing from your public platform and things you say,
Mm-hmm.
which is even different from music because, if you want to consider playing a sport a type of art or, the artistry Kyrie has in his basketball, dribbling skills, like, you're probably not going to be thinking about Kyrie as a person while you're watching him play, and, his impact on the team isn't really connected to his public platform at all, so
Mm-hmm.
I would see more of an argument for Kyrie as a sports player to maybe continue playing. But I know also the NBA is very big on their image and their public platform, so that's definitely important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another example of a big artist, of course, is Chris Brown, who many years ago had his controversy over his, not even really alleged, it was confirmed abuse of Rihanna. But he really still has a career. I mean, I guess you could say he was canceled, but he's still making music, and most recently was featured on Metro Boomin's album Heroes and Villains. And I know when I heard his feature, I just took a bit of an issue with it. I just don't totally understand why he still has a career, and I guess abuse is a different topic in some ways than like anti-Semitism, but still, it's kind of crazy that he's still able to keep making music and make money.
Yeah, there's not really much to add here, honestly. It's kind of astounding how some people, I'm not really familiar with everything that happened, obviously, because it's been a long time, but it's not like he made a jump into trying and apologizing, or did he do that or no? Like,
I'm not totally sure.
That's kind of weird, not gonna lie.
I don't remember, honestly. It's been so long.
Yeah. So it's kind of Yeah, that's something to kind of mention, how time usually is something that could be either like sort of a forgiver. I can't say that because it's not like the guy's been totally pardoned, because I'm not sure if he came out and apologized or not, or even tried to defend his image or that sort of thing. He was just like, oh yeah, I did it, and then he disappeared for a while, and he somehow managed to like hide it away until everything kind of came back, and he just sort of flew by and made his money.
Time is definitely one of the best friends of controversial figures. I mean, especially Kanye, of like a lot of the crazy things he's said, it just people kind of forget eventually, and your art
because of how recurring it is.
Your art will likely stand the test of time more than your comments in most cases. Another recent example has been Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion.
Oh yeah, and that's still going on until now.
It is still going on. The trial is going on right now, and I know there's a lot of issues with like contradicting statements, and they can't quite pin down, I guess, what totally happened. But essentially, Megan accused Tory of shooting her in the foot?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is crazy how, shooting someone could not be a confirmed thing of all things. But yeah, that's been a big thing. I don't know exactly how Tory's music career has been affected.
I mean, he did bounce back in like COVID. I remember he came on a stream with some influencer and he dropped a freestyle. And as soon as he did that, he was right back into being relevant again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of the public's also on Megan's side, so that's like kind of an example, I guess, of like a two-sided thing, which again is crazy that something like that could be like maybe a controversial topic, that there's two sides. I know it was the same thing with Amber Heard, Johnny Depp. That was a huge thing.
Oh yeah.
Like a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever it was.
I feel like it was this year.
Yeah, no, it feels like it just happened.
Feels like it was a long time ago. And but that, I think, borders on a different type of argument where it focuses more on the power of certain people and how you can't really be pardoned until you've genuinely like fought for your spot or place, and that's sort of like a different argument. But also I can understand how that is like very, very like even I, as someone who watched the Pirates movies and that sort of stuff, the gall of Disney to call him back to play the role one more time after them kicking him out. Or no, it was Warner Brothers. Sorry, I apologize. It was Warner Brothers. They kicked him out for Grindelwald, I believe, in the Harry Potter sequel movies. I forgot their name, but yeah, I kind of take a different look at Warner Brothers now, how they see people as just properties and that sort of thing, even after like they kicked out the man when he was proven until nothing was proven to be true or factually correct.
I think one of the things also with the big corporations, like the part they play in all of this, is I think a lot of the time the executives don't necessarily care about social justice. It's really just their public image. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you don't want to be associated with someone who's controversial and has made, bad comments. But then as soon as like maybe they're exonerated in the eye of the public, they're like, oh yeah, that's fine, just come back. And, I think, yeah, definitely like the executives and companies don't really care as much.
Which could be like how some people still manage to maintain a sort of career. As long as the executives are happy and the money is flowing, then yeah, there shouldn't be any problem with that. That's how some people see it, at least. But that also borders on a different type of argument. Kobe passed away a couple of years ago now, 2020, and everything. But also before that, during his prominent career, there were a lot of sort of allegations of him doing not so nice stuff, like abuse or what was it? There were a lot.
Yeah, I think there was definitely Kobe had some abuse allegations
that the NBA kind of swept up under the rug because he was their money-making superstar, and
there's definitely some things I've heard over the years, like, and maybe none of them are specifically confirmed, but just kind of things floating around is like, obviously no one's perfect, but especially celebrities tend to have like random things dug up from their past or things like that kind of affect their image. But if you're famous enough, if you make enough money, people can kind of tend to just not care. And, you know, a part with Kobe, and I know it was also with, like, XXXTentacion is another example, is, like, when you die, people tend to absolve you of a lot of, like, your wrongdoings, which, you know, I guess is kind of fair. Like, it's obviously very sad when someone like that dies and everyone's mourning them. But, you know, obviously we shouldn't completely forget that in general.
Yeah.
So I guess with, like, all of this considered, you know, it's a really difficult topic for everyone, especially, you know, fans of the controversial people and people trying to make different ethical decisions around the industry. You know, there's really no right answer. We had to kind of weigh the different options and different considerations. And that was kind of what I wanted to convey in my essay, is that, you know, it's really personally up to you. And I think as long as you are educated about the situation and you know, consider all the different factors, you should really decide for yourself, not really what the public idea is saying, but, you know, what you truly think to be right and whether you should continue to support a specific person or artist.
Well said.
So I guess that wraps everything up. You know, thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ali. Love you. Shout out. And yeah.
See you next week.